So today, I wanted to look at the best games released each year for the Nintendo Switch from 2017 until 2025. It feels like the right time, as the amount of Switch 1 games we get is going to diminish over time, and the next 2 years will definitely be building momentum towards the Switch 2 as developers come to grips with its capabilities, which is really pretty exciting. Just a quick reminder that this is completely subjective, and I probably don't appreciate your favourite games, but that's okay. Discussion and debate is always healthy. Just don't get too wild with your opinions. If Legends EA is on anyone's list, you will be eradicated from the internet. But yeah, it's just a little fun, introspective video that I hope you enjoy. And if you do, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content as we move on into 2026. But with that said, let's dive into it. In the grand scheme of things, 2017 was a pretty stellar year. Not the best, but by no means the worst. Super Mario Odyssey delivered relentless joy and creativity and really reinvigorated the franchise, while Stardew Valley became one of the most perfectly suited handheld experiences on the system that to this day receives updates and adulation for its coziness, solid mechanics, and open-ended nature. But there was only ever one winner here. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild did more than launch the Nintendo Switch. It fundamentally reshaped how open-world games could function. I mean, just look at how many games have since tried to recreate it. Rather than guiding the player with dense UI, quest markers, or rigid progression, it trusted curiosity and experimentation. Every system feeds into another. Physics, chemistry, stamina, weather, and enemy behaviour all interact in ways that make it feel so natural and open-ended. That opening sequence alone, when you step out onto the Grand Plateau and the camera zooms out, is up there with one of the best moments in gaming I have ever experienced. It really was incredible. I say this all the time. I do think that this is objectively a worse game than Tears of the Kingdom, and it definitely has a number of flaws, but on a personal level, it will always be superior. The sense of discovery remains unmatched, even years later, because the game never feels like it's pushing you towards the correct solution. You can complete the game in 2 hours or 200 hours. It respects your intelligence and creativity, and that philosophy ripples through the entire experience. Even now, Breath of the Wild feels less like a product of 2017 and more like a design blueprint that the industry is still catching up to and trying to replicate. And moving on to 2018. A year that was more about indies on the Switch, as the bigger developers were working on sequels and other devs were trying to figure out how to port bigger games over. Octopath Traveler impressed visually, ushering in the new HD 2D graphics that have gone on to be an absolute hit, while Celeste paired precision platforming with an unexpectedly personal narrative. And it really was fantastic and close to taking the title. But other standouts were Dead Cells, Into the Breach, and Inside, all excellent games in their own right. I am sure many people would argue Smash Bros Ultimate or Undertale, but for me, 2018 Switch Game of the Year was Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight stands out as one of the most complete and confident indie games ever released. Its world is melancholic, hostile, and quietly beautiful, drawing players deeper through atmosphere rather than exposition. The combat is precise and demanding, but never unfair, rewarding mastery and patience, and the exploration feels intimate and it all blends together beautifully. Maps must be bought, paths uncovered, and shortcuts discovered organically. It's a game that would never struggle on the Switch hardware, which is usually the limiting factor with games. But what truly elevates Hollow Knight is how cohesive everything feels. Art direction, music, enemy design, and lore all serve a single unified vision. Few games create such a strong sense of place, and even fewer maintain tension and intrigue across dozens of hours. Hollow Knight isn't just a standout Metroidvania, it's one of the most fully realised worlds in gaming. When I think back to it, 2019 wasn't a great year, but boy was I wrong. We had Divinity Original Sin 2 ported over, delivering astonishing depth, whilst the fantastic Ori and the Blind Forest Definitive Edition brought emotional storytelling and stunning art to the platform. You also had first-party titles with Fire Emblem Three Houses, Luigi's Mansion 3, and Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Remake. And I want to give a special mention to Astral Chain, to this day an underrated gem. And whilst editing, I realised that I completely forgot about Alien Isolation, which in many years probably would have taken my top spot. It was a brilliant port of a fantastic atmospheric game. But there was only ever going to be one winner here, and that's of course Dragon Quest XI Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. This game represents the absolute gold standard for classic JRPGs on Switch. It embraces tradition unapologetically, yet feels endlessly refined. The story unfolds at a deliberate pace, allowing characters and world building to breathe, while combat remains engaging through smart party dynamics rather than constant mechanical gimmicks. The Switch version is particularly notable for feeling complete, packed with quality of life improvements, additional content, and flexible presentation options, and everything is about as fleshed out as it could be. And I'll use the word again because it is so fitting. It is just a complete and consistent experience. There are no dramatic spikes or drops in quality. It remains polished, charming, and emotionally resonant from beginning to end. Of course, it follows a lot of cliches, but with what's on offer, this will remain in the upper echelons of JRPGs available in the system, and it will take something very special from the sequel to top this. Getting into 2020, this definitely wasn't the strongest year in overall quality, likely down to a little known pandemic. But there are 4 standout releases that more than make up for the dearth of depth. You had the phenom that was Animal Crossing New Horizons, arguably one of the best time releases in history, hitting shelves the week before global lockdowns, becoming a beast of its own. And then you had the 2 indie titans in Hades and Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Hades is just incredible. I am not even the biggest fan of roguelikes, and this still came pretty close to taking the top spot. The highest praise I can give it is that before playing it I had no interest in roguelikes, and now it's probably my 3rd most played genre. And Ori was just beautiful. The story, the visuals and the sound design were all so immersive and emotive, but as a JRPG guy, I think we all know the real winner of 2020. Xenoblade Chronicles The Definitive Edition gave one of Nintendo's most ambitious RPGs a second life, and in many ways it finally reached its full potential on Switch. The game's scale remains staggering, massive environments, dynamic battles, and an emotionally charged narrative that unfolds over dozens of hours. But what elevates this edition is the refinement, improved visuals, cleaner UI, and modernised systems that make the story more approachable without sacrificing depth. Combat rewards positioning, awareness, and party synergy while the story steadily builds towards moments that resonate long after the credits roll. My only real critique is the slow opening hours to the game. That really is a pet peeve of mine with games. Why risk turning people away with a slow build-up? It does eventually open up after about 4 hours or so, and it truly pays off. But yeah, it's irritating. On the Switch, Xenoblade feels uniquely immersive, whether played docked or handheld. Despite the technical compromises, the ambition on display is undeniable. It represents a rare blend of narrative weight and mechanical complexity, and remains one of the most defining RPG experiences available on Nintendo hardware. And although it has yet to be announced, my most anticipated game in coming years is the 4th entry in this series, built specifically for the Switch 2 hardware. And as we hit 2021, for me, this is the worst year for the Nintendo Switch in terms of quality and quantity. You had a few indie gems such as Loop Hero and Death's Door, great games in their own right, but not quite at that level. The only 2 runners-up I can really discuss are Metroid Dread, which was a good game, but it wasn't what we wanted. It was a nice, solid return to the classic 2D formula, but we were all waiting for Prime 4. And then we had Disco Elysium, the final cut. It was a great game. It had a number of issues at launch, but they were smoothed out. But the load times remained, and the AI really didn't like being told what to do, and at times felt really obtrusive. And I also had small issues with the interface and menus being a little clunky. These are all very small issues, but they add up and take away from what was otherwise a great gaming experience. But I decided to go with Shin Megami Tensei 5, one of the most mechanically confident JRPGs on the Switch. SMV5 is no stranger to load times and technical difficulties due to the hardware, somewhat fixed by the Vengeance update but still present to this day. But when it's purring, it really excels. It wastes no time in establishing its tone, bleak, oppressive and uncompromising. The combat is deep, demanding and relentlessly engaging, built around exploiting weaknesses and mastering the systems. And then you've got the massive open zones that really encourage exploration, and the demon fusion remains endlessly addictive. But what makes it really stand out is how much trust it places in the player. The tutorials are minimal, the difficulty is real, and the progression feels earned. Stylistically, it's bold and striking, pairing modern visuals with haunting music. SMT5 isn't for everyone, but those willing to meet it on its terms. It will offer you one of the most rewarding RPG experiences on the platform, even with its technical issues. Moving into 2022, and I have to say, as a massive JRPG fan, that this was a fantastic year. You had Persona 5 Royal, for many people, a masterpiece. I will forever struggle with the school setting and routine, a personal flaw that really stops me enjoying these otherwise incredible games. And then you had Xenoblade Chronicles 3, for all intensive purposes the culmination of an incredible trilogy. It improved on almost everything, and really left a lasting impression. And in terms of immersion and world building, it's up there. Nier Automata, if not for the technical difficulties, would definitely be in the conversation. And then you had Game Freak, seemingly diverting focuses and offering a new take on Pokemon with Legends Arceus, a huge win for the company. But now we know how that ended. But for me, 2022 wasn't even a close call, and I went for a game that for the most part was solo developed. Chained Echoes is a love letter to classic JRPGs, but one written with modern understanding and restraint. It strips away outdated conventions while preserving what made the genre special: meaningful exploration, tactical combat, and strong world building. The battles are engaging from start to finish thanks to its overdrive system, which discourages mindless repetition. The narrative balances political intrigue with personal stakes, and its pacing remains tight across a lengthy runtime. On Switch, Chained Echoes performs reliably and suits handheld play perfectly. What truly makes it remarkable, though, is how confidently it stands alongside much larger productions. It doesn't feel like a nostalgic imitation, it feels like a thoughtful evolution. For many players, this was a reminder that indie RPGs can compete with and even surpass blockbuster releases in both depth and satisfaction. And to some degree, a crippling indictment of these AAA releases, but at the same time, it's a celebration of an incredible game driven by one man's vision and determination. And as we move into 2023, it's a year that didn't have the strongest lineup, but realistically, there wasn't really any discussion. There are a few honourable mentions, going to the Metroid Prime Remastered, again, not the title we wanted, but we knew we were getting closer, and this was almost a teaser for what to expect. And then we had Sea of Stars, an indie gem that really looked to Chrono Trigger for inspiration, and it was an excellent adventure. Then, Dave the Diver, while not technically an indie game, feels and plays like one, and it was so unique and charming at the time of release. It was a massive success, and had a surprising amount of depth to it. It was such a fun and complete experience. But of course the winner here was The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. This much anticipated sequel took the foundation of Breath of the Wild and expanded it in ways that felt almost impossible on the same hardware. Its defining feature is player creativity, the ability to build, combine, and experiment with systems that feel limitless. Rather than simply offering more content, it encourages entirely new approaches to problem solving. Exploration is laid vertically, with skies, depths, and the surface all interwoven, making the same world feel infinitely larger and more lived in. What made it exceptional is how naturally these systems all integrated. Nothing feels bolted on. On the Switch, the technical achievement alone is staggering, but its freedom is what truly defines it. Tears of the Kingdom doesn't just give players tools, it invites them to think differently, making every solution feel personal. It is inarguable that this game improved on almost every aspect of Breath of the Wild. For some people, it was just too much. Too much freedom, too much creativity, and just too much to do. But for me, it was just right. And mechanically, it is the closest to a perfect game as I have seen in a long, long time. But personally, I will always back Breath of the Wild. As mentioned earlier, I am not sure I will ever share that same emotional connection to a game, and I will gladly die on that hill. "2024 was underwhelming in a lot of ways, especially for AAA releases. We had a few less taxing games, such as the Dragon Quest III HD remaster, which was admittedly great, and we also got Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom, which had performance issues and it just wasn't for me. The clunky UI and reverting back to the top-down chibi visuals. I think we all know the technical limits of the console were an issue, and there was no chance of any modern games getting ported. We were in that weird grey area where we were waiting for a Switch 2 announcement, but it was still a great year for the indie developers. You had Balataro with its incredibly unique and addictive take on poker, and you also had the likes of Animal Well, Neva, and Pentiment, all great games, but the winner for me was Unicorn Overlord. Not many would assume this was an indie release, and that speaks volumes to the presentation and execution. It is a dense, systems-driven strategy RPG that rewards patience and long-term planning. Rather than focusing on spectacle, it prioritizes depth. Army composition, positioning, and preparation matter far more than reflexes. Its world is richly illustrated with hand-drawn art that elevates every battle and conversation. The progression is deliberate, encouraging thoughtful decision-making rather than constant forward momentum. But what really sets Unicorn Overlord apart is its confidence in complexity. It never simplifies itself to appeal to a wider audience, and that restraint makes it deeply satisfying for players willing to engage with its systems fully. I've already said it a few times in this video, but it is just a complete and consistent experience from start to finish, and I cannot wait to see what Vanillaware do next. Finally, for 2025, in what is hands down the best year for Nintendo Switch software releases, even setting aside the Switch 2 release, we had an absolute phenom that is Hades 2, impossibly improving on its predecessor, sitting on near perfect scores across the board. And then you had Trails in the Sky First Chapter Remake, which fulfilled its promise in every aspect, seemingly relaunching the franchise to the Western audience. And then of course you have Silksong, the long, long-awaited sequel that took the world by storm, and that's not even taking into account all of the remasters we got this year: Final Fantasy Tactics, Suikoden 1 and 2, Dragon Quest 1 and 2, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, and then all of the Switch 2 releases, with my pick of the bunch being Cyberpunk. And whilst Metroid Prime 4 didn't live up to my personal expectations, many people loved it. But my personal pick for Game of the Year is a title I waited over a decade for, and after numerous delays, we finally got it. And that is Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. Fantasy Life I seems like the perfect closing chapter for the original Switch generation. It blends RPG progression with life sim structure in a way that encourages long-term, low-pressure play. Switching between jobs remains deeply satisfying, allowing players to engage at their own pace without forcing a single playstyle. And there is never an overarching pressure to follow any route. You go at your own pace and quite literally do whatever you want. The loop of gathering, crafting, and combat feels comforting rather than demanding. On aging hardware, the game still feels thoughtfully designed, prioritizing stability and charm over excess. What makes Fantasy Life special is how welcoming it really is. It respects time, invites routine, and rewards consistency. As a late generation Switch title, it represents the system at its most relaxed and refined, and from the moment I picked it up, I knew it was special. It was everything I wanted and more. The extra layers of depth added with jumping back and forth through time, adding exploration and legendary crafting in Gino Morgia was brilliant, and now with the recent roguelike 2.0 update just being the cherry on top. I know people won't agree with this one, but it is a very personal pick. And yeah, not only is it my most played game of the year, but the one I have the most memories of, and I had a hell of a time with it. And that just about wraps up the video. My personal favourite games released on the Nintendo Switch every year between 2017 and 2025. And right now, if you ask me to pick just one, I'd probably tell you where to go, because that is a decision that's far too difficult to make. Maybe I will tackle this in another video, but right now, I'm not ready for the headache. But as usual, be sure to let me know in the comments where I went wrong, what you disagree with, and if you're feeling up to it, your GOTY Switch game. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to be kept up to date with all new videos. But with that said, thanks for watching, stay cozy, and I'll see you around.
You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world.